How was lunch, everyone? Did you guys try the potato salad? It was good, eh? So Jeremy and I are here to talk to you today about the Thunder Bay generating station. We're going to talk a little bit about the purchase, the decommissioning, and repurposing of it. So Jeremy, first introduce yourself.
Yep, I'm Jeremy Later, Director of Demolition Operations for York1's.
And I do business development for York1's. So we both joined York1 through an acquisition. So York1 is a vertically integrated waste or environmental infrastructure company. So we do a lot of the demolition support work in-house. And why that's important is you'll see a little bit further in the slides. And here is my pointer.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's unique about this project is the purchase of the land. So we've seen a lot of projects here where we have clients that we're working with. Okay, sorry. So what's unique about this project is the fact that we purchased the land as opposed to just working for a client. So I'll get into that a little bit further. The reason why we purchased it, so the Ontario Power Generation, they owned 4 coal-fired power plants that they wanted to decommission. So the first 3 projects, they contracted out and they worked directly with the contractors and they led the program. But for this 4th property, they decided they wanted to sell it. They didn't want to be part of the decommissioning. They didn't need the land anymore, and they wanted to divest that asset and really turn it over to future use that they didn't have. So in April 2020, our team set in a proposal and we made an offer on it. So when you're buying a power plant, there's a lot of considerations. It's not just knocking the building down. It's like you have to look through all of that. So let's start with the plant first, and it's a 326 megawatt 3-unit coal-fired generating station, and it had a 650-foot stack. So a nice project from a demolition perspective, but now does it make sense to own this property? So we'll go a little bit into the purchase, we'll do a little bit about the decommissioning, and then we'll wind it up with the exit strategy, like what our plan was for the site. So first, you have to understand where the site is. So we're here in Toronto, the Red Star. The site is in Thunder Bay. So just to give you a bit of context, if 2 cars were to leave here, one heading to Savannah and one heading to Thunder Bay, they'd hit there at the same time. So it's a considerable drive through northern Ontario. So that's Lake Superior, so you have to go all the way along the top of Lake Superior. There's a lot of winter conditions you have to consider. There's animals. It's not a very populated area, so it's a very remote part of the country. And
1-lane highways too as well.
Yeah, 1-lane highways. So. And then, so that's that. And then, okay, so then the other thing to consider is logistics. There's no steel mills around there. We're looking at salvaging as much steel from this facility to pay for the project. How do you get it to the market? The closest market is Sault Ste. Marie, which is an 8-hour drive, again, across the top of Lake Superior through winter road conditions.
Yeah, and a lot of the scrap that we processed and shipped to the mill, we ship by truck, 40 tons going down the road there at that 8-hour drive one way. So, and then sometimes we're using rails too. So just moving the material too had its own challenges as well. And again, this is in northern Ontario. Right now, the weather to drive that road wouldn't be too bad, but you got to remember in the winter times they're getting up to minus 45 Celsius. That would be minus 49 Fahrenheit up there, and a lot of snow. A lot of the roads get closed down daily just because of the terrain.
Yeah. Okay, so we all understand how to figure out what it would take to demolish or decommission this structure. So these are kind of like some of the considerations that we put into it. We had our costing, we had our timeline, we had our potential scrap revenue sorted out. We had to figure out how much revenue overall we would bring in from the steel, and then we also had to look at what the potential profit would be for the site. Is it worth doing this? Is the profit worth the overall risk that we'd be looking at for the project? Then you look at the site itself, and you have to kind of decide if you can build a business case for it. So it was a 120-acre site on Lake Superior. It's bordered on, wrong button. You can see the water is all around it. So there is a nice vessel port there, so deep water vessel dock. There's a rail that comes into the site. So there is long-term options to use the site logistically. There was the opportunity to take water in and out, like the ECAs to draw and discharge water were going with the site. There was a coal storage facility there on the site that we had to kind of decide whether or not the risks around owning that was worth it. So again, you have to really consider what your risks and the considerations for the overall project as well as owning the land would be. So cash flow was a big thing for the demolition part of it. We have out-of-town costs, weather we talked about, and then again, moving material logistics. But now you're owning the property, so what are the risks around that? So we talked about environmental impacts like the coal yard. We talked, there was oil storage on the site. There was some impacted soil. And then once we're done with the site, what are we going to do with it? Like what, if we buy the site, what can we do with it afterwards? And then the current zoning that the site had was for power generating. So is there an opportunity to change that? Will we be able to change that? Will we be able to make it usable for future needs? And then again, cash flow. That's a big part of it. Can we fund this project? Is it going to impact all of our other lines of business, all the other operations that we have on a day-to-day basis? So those are some of the risks we had to consider. I think the next screen talks about the cash flow. So you have to fund this project. If you look at the line matrix there, you're a year of funding this project before you actually start seeing any money coming in. Is it like, is it impacting your other businesses? Or you don't want to stop your day-to-day. You have to keep moving forward as a company. I think, Jeremy, you mentioned it was 25% of our demolition revenue within this project. So we still had a lot of other work going on. And this isn't going to be the only project we have going on. So you still have all those other considerations back at home that you had to make sure that you were accounting for as well.
100%. Yeah, you can see we got into $2.5 million worth of debt. And it, like Christina said, it took us about a year before we got out of there and start generating money. We're still generating scrap, but the first, as all of you guys know, it's a lot of abatement, taking that into effect, removing all the asbestos and other things as well. And also the purchase of the land. And also with that long travel, floating equipment and all that up there too is a hefty price to get going, so.
Okay, and so then I mentioned environmental impacts. So these are two figures. So the first one, you can see this site, like it's an island. And then the one right below it, it has all of those green dots. That's kind of the high impacted soil areas. And if you see, there's all waterways around that. And then the last diagram actually shows the water flowing off the site. So all of the water within the site is actually moving into the lake. And you have a coal yard there. Is the current mitigating things that are in place, is it going to be effective for the long term? Is there any environmental risk that we're opening ourselves up to? Those were all things that we had to take into consideration. And during this process, it took about, I would say, 6 months with the environmental team, with legal, and it almost ended here because there was a lot of concerns around the environmental part of it. But we worked through that. We made sure we were comfortable with the risk, and we made sure that our exit strategy was going to be effective, and we're not going to be long-term having to deal with cleaning up this part of it.
And also with this site too, OPG was decommissioning a site, and they don't want any environmental impacts. On the screen here, I can probably point with my laser here. There's a pond there. That pond there was collecting all the water off the site, and they are treating it to make sure they're meeting their requirements. But this is going on at the same time as we're doing demolition as well. So majority of the project, they are taking samples weekly to make sure they're collecting all the water and making sure that no contaminants are getting dispersed into Lake Superior or the other lands.
So now we'll get into the decommissioning part. This is more Jeremy's strong side of things. So
So the decommissioning part of it, it's a dream project for any demolition contractor. We had 3 explosions that we took place, basically the stack, the precipitators, and the boilers. We also did a cut and pull, a couple of them as well, which was really, really great. And conventional demolition too. You can see in the picture here, we had some Volvo equipment. We had 7 pieces at one time going. We had 2 high reaches. We had a 750 high reach and a 480 high reach, and then a 750 with a second member shear. The high reaches weren't used all the time, but with the new day and age with the high reach, you can boom down to a normal stick and boom, right? That can help out quite a bit. We shipped off about 38,000 tons of scrap off this project processed.
So just a quick note on that, anyone paying attention. We did not hit our scrap numbers, but we were very conservative on our scrap overall, so we hit that dollar value we needed to hit, but we didn't hit the actual material coming off of it.
No. Yep, so 38,000 tons of scrap shipped. Again, we had to make sure we process everything because it's a 16-hour round trip, or by rail that would possibly take a couple weeks. So we had to make sure that we're getting the right weight in the trucks and stuff, which we had to scale on site. The project was about 29 months worth of work from start to finish. Safety is a huge thing. I want to say thanks to all the guys that were on site. I know they're not here, but our health and safety team were here. But these are some of the statistics that, 200 site orientations for all visitors, 1,000 daily hazard assessments, 200 safety talks, 10,000 equipment and job site inspections, and also 125,000 hours worked on site with no lost time injury, which is a huge success for us. This is our first power plant. Any new project that you get into, you're kind of nervous a little bit, especially on health and safety, but we made sure that we took this very seriously. And at the end of the project, it worked out very well for us.
And especially being an owner of the project, it was an opportunity to maybe cut costs a little bit. We are in charge of our safety, but the fact that our safety team and our team said, no, you know what, we want to make sure that everyone goes home at night. It went from the ownership right down. We did not cut any corners on that. We held ourselves to our standards that any client would hold us to. So
yeah, just talking on that, like we all know how our safety standards are when we work for our clients and any other job sites, but when we go home, sometimes our safety goes down a level. So that's the same thing here. We want to make sure we're still working at what our clients expect and what our guys expect, and all personnel on site, and we did do that. So here's an overview of the site. As you guys can see, it's a pretty big facility. At the bottom left-hand corner is a switch yard that Ontario Power used to feed into there, and that's York1's grid, and they would have the power go out from there. That switch yard is still active today. They'll be running that for another 100 years out of there. To keep it active, so you can see how close the power plant is from there. So the sequence of this power plant here, how we wanted to demolish it, was basically take the conveyors out and then also go after the 600-foot stack, and that would let us use the building as protection for the switchyard, so no debris can go flying into there. Also, we had to make sure of the waterways and all the inlets, and we had to work with the fishery as well to make sure we're in compliance with all the requirements that we had to. After the stack, we would then go after the precipes right near the stack, and then the turbine hall on the other side, freeing up the boilers on the boiler 2 and 3, 2 and 3. And then if you see down just a little bit lower was boiler 1. It's a little bit smaller. And on the right side of that was a warehouse that we planned on keeping, and a mid-house. So there's a lot of work that went into that separation. But at the end of the day, it was a company's decision after we did all the work in separation that those things came down afterwards. So
we decided the long-term value wasn't worth it. Sorry, Jeremy.
Yeah, the long-term value wasn't worth it.
We wanted to scrap.
Yeah, but it did prove that you could see how close they're butted up to the boiler 1, that we actually saved the warehouse in the mid-building. And then after we did the blast, the rest of it came down. So kind of not the greatest way to do it, but it showed that we could do it in one way. So.
Give us a challenge. You just need to be challenged.
Yeah. So, like I said, the first thing we wanted to tackle was the stack. So the stack was a concrete shell on the outside, had 3 flues on the inside. So the first thing that we did, we came up with a plan. We hired a blasting company, York1's Energetics. We invited them down to have a look with their engineer and our engineer. And we came up with a game plan of how we can follow this in the right direction and keeping everything safe and environmentally safe. Once we came up with the plan, we went to ASI, and they modeled it to let us know how this would fall with our plan in place. After we did the modeling, the stack, we've seen that they put the door in the wrong spot. They always do that for us demolition contractors. They never think of us. So we had to re-engineer a 40 by 40 diameter wall inside. So we had to pour that to make sure when we blasted the stack that it would go in the right way, and that wall that we just poured that would support that weight to help it hinge over. So
that's, again, upfront costs that we had to make sure we had money in there to cover the cost of that. And as an owner looking at that, you're thinking, we're just going to be blasting that. Are you sure there's not another option? Like, can we do it cheaper? But if that wasn't an option, we had to make sure we were doing the right means and methods to complete the work.
And here's a video of the simulation of the stack and how it's going to fall that ASI provided us.
So again, every stack is different, so just knowing that this is how it was going to fall, it was worth spending the upfront money to ensure that this was going to be the right option for our team.
And also gave the blasting company and ourselves confidence and the engineering that we did everything possible and everything looks good, the modeling and everything. Just gives you that reassurance.
Here's a slide. So it worked. It went down.
Yeah, it went perfectly as planned. We couldn't be happier. There was some safety stuff that we had to go above and beyond. Was even the waterways everyone could see there is keeping people away from the waterways just in case the stack went the other way. But we worked with the local OPP and police officers to keep them away and out away from any flying debris areas. So after the stack, as you guys can see in this next picture, we got the stack taken care of. Now we want to separate the precipitators that's on the left-hand side there away from the boilers. So as you can see, we took our 750 high reach and we marched right through there, and that's about 120 feet where the bottom of the siding is. So the rest of the work had to be done with precision cuts with our torch guys and also blasting too. So once we got to this stage, again, before we removed any of the lower steel here, we invited York1's again, Energetics, and our engineering firm to come out and take a look at what we can do and what we can remove. And as you can see, we removed everything from the 50-foot mark of 0 to 50 feet and made sure we had a good opportunity to rotate this precipitator. As you can see in the boiler, how close the boiler is there too. This is not, it's very close. So when we blast it, we want to make sure that we're not hitting the boilers or any of the legs to damage. So when we go in to blast the boilers, that they're not defect, which would affect us later on down the road, right? So, and then in the picture on the right is the turbine hall. So we tackled this during the winter, the coldest months, January and February. We actually left the roof structure up. Our high reach and all our equipment can go in there, and we can keep the snow and wind off us. Again, minus 45. That year that we were there, the first year, was the worst winter they had since 1955. Just so you know, the snowbanks were higher than the stop signs, and something that we're not usually used to in the Toronto area, but up there they're pretty used to it. So this actually worked out really well for us, and we're good. And again, here's the boiler prep. So you can see on the left here, Rakowski, again, Energetics came by with our engineering firm. We came up with a plan, what to remove, what bracing to remove, if there had to be any extra bracing installed. We did have to install extra bracing on some of the blasts, and you can see there that they're getting ready to, they're setting their charges and wrapping the explosives with boxes. On the right here, you can see that's our 750 high reach, so 120 foot, and that is the boiler when we tipped it over. So still a huge structure when it's laying on its side, and then the machine in the background is another 750 with a second member shear. So still lots of work when you laid it on the side, but as you can see with the next video, some of the blasts that we did, it all went according to plan. So all the blasts went off successfully. What I've taken away from the blasts especially is, as you can see, we filmed a lot of it. We have a lot of footage. We used concrete pictures at the time to film this stuff. On the blasting end of it, which we had a lot of cameras on all the blasts. And one of the reasons of that is to capture, to make sure our planning went as planned. And so it makes us better.
Charges in there afterwards.
Yeah.
To make sure everything exploded, right?
Yeah, and to make sure that it's the building is reacting, because you're talking milliseconds, right? And it makes us better, but also makes the blasting company better, and they can change things as they do projects going forward. So we shared that all with them, and after every blast, we sat down and talked with them and see what we could have done differently, just to make both of us a little bit better. And like Christina said too, there's a safety aspect of it too. There's no guarantee that every piece will go off, explosion. So you can go back into the film and make sure if one didn't go off, exactly where that is. So it was great to have.
So just to wrap it up, we had our exit strategy, the long-term use for the site. So as I mentioned before, we looked at the zoning. So we went and we rezoned the site from generating station specific to heavy industrial. So we've really opened up the long-term use for the site. We've been working with the local economic development and a few different other ones, and we've been marketing the site just kind of very quietly. But we have an LOI on the site, so we're hoping that that will move into a sale, and then we will have completed our goal for the site, which was repurpose it. And that's that. That is a successful purchase.
I just have one question. We don't have a ton of time, but I just have one question. And can you talk about some of the lessons that you learned on, like the purchasing of the project? And this is such a dynamic and different project. What are the takeaways, and would you do it again?
Yeah, 100%, because it wasn't my money, so. But I gotta go up. Everyone in this room, everyone loves demolition. you know, I started from doing houses up to power plants now, and 100% I do it. It's in everyone's blood here, right? So I do like to thank my wife too, because I managed this project. We did move up there for 2 years, so it's very far away, so she took that just so I can continue doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So.
that was good.
Yeah.
And then also too, from the other side of things, lessons learned, our team has really grown. Like overall as people, we've really been able to challenge ourselves beyond what we expected from ourselves, and our team looks much different now, but it's been a really great learning curve for everyone. So, yeah.
Congratulations.
All right, thank you.